Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really try to uncover the knowledge you need to excel in healthcare. Today, we're jumping into something really crucial, the amazing dynamic journey of human development. And it's definitely not just a kid thing, Understand this lifelong process is, well, it's fundamental to being a great nurse, really seeing the whole person.
That's exactly right. Every single patient you meet, from a brand new baby to your oldest resident, they're all somewhere on this complex developmental path. And our mission today, we're going to distill the key developmental theories from Fundamentals of Nursing by Potter, Perry, Stockert, and Hall. We'll unpack the big ones, biophysical, psychosocial, cognitive, moral, and show how they're like essential frameworks for care across the whole lifespan.
Yeah, and you'll walk away with real practical insights. We'll connect these theories to, actual situations, hospital, community clinic, home care, showing how they directly impact your clinical judgment. Expect some of those aha moments that make complex stuff simpler and sharpen your thinking for NCLEX and best practices. So yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. What exactly are growth and development? And why is knowing the difference so important for us as nurses? People mix them up all the time.
They really do. And it's a super important distinction. Growth, well, that's really about the physical changes. From conception right through older adulthood. Think about it, it's things like getting taller, gaining weight, but also, the physical decline later in life, like losing muscle mass. It's measurable stuff, most of it.
Precisely. And development. That's much broader. It covers the biological, cognitive, and the socio-emotional changes happening across a whole lifetime. Development is dynamic, it's progressive, always moving forward usually. But, and this is key, illness or trauma can sometimes cause delays or even regression.
And what's really powerful here is how understanding the normal patterns helps us. As nurses, it lets us predict, spot deviations, sometimes even prevent problems. It really influences patient health, that foresight.
And it all connects, right? The success or, struggles in one developmental phase really impact how someone handles the next one. Think about a baby who starts walking early, maybe 10 months.
Yeah.
That early mobility just opens up their world for exploration,
Right.
More stimulation.
Totally. Then compare that to a child with a delay, maybe not walking until 20 months. Their chances to explore and interact are just, limited during that time. It's not just about hitting physical milestones. It clearly shows how one area affects everything else.
Which leads to a critical point for nursing. Why is it so vital we take a lifespan perspective, not just focus on kids?
Because people don't stop developing after childhood.
Oh,
It's
totally.
truly lifelong, and having that broad view, that's your foundation for everything.
Right.
Planning health screenings, taking good histories, health promotion, patient teaching, it underpins all of it.
Yeah.
True holistic care.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's look at the physical blueprint with biophysical theories. These look at how our bodies grow and change and how we use norms to assess that.
And the big name here is Arnold Gesell. His main idea was that each kid's growth pattern is unique, sure, but it's basically guided by genes following a set sequence. He really emphasized those innate patterns.
And he pinpointed two key patterns you hear a lot about. First, cephalocaudal means growth is fastest at the top. So the head and brain develop way faster than, say, arm and leg coordination.
Right. Head first, then down, and the other one.
Proximodistal. Growth starts at the center, the trunk, and moves outward. So your internal organs develop before, fine motor skills in your fingers.
Center out. Got it.
And this, of course, brings up that classic debate, nature versus nurture. While genes clearly direct the sequence, the environment plays a huge role in how much of that genetic potential actually gets realized.
Exactly. Genes might set the blueprint for height, for instance, but you only reach that potential if you have good nutrition, no chronic illness, things like that.
Yeah, poor nutrition can definitely stunt growth. Even if the genetic potential was there, it's a real interplay.
Okay, so moving from the physical, how do our minds, personalities, and relationships develop? Now we're getting into psychoanalytical and psychosocial theories. These often look at unconscious stuff and universal stages of development.
That's the idea. Sigmund Freud's model, psychoanalytical, very influential, even if debated now. He proposed these stages where early experiences really shape your adult personality. Unconscious drives were big for him.
And what's key for us to grasp are his ideas about personality components.
Yeah.
The id, the ego, and the superego.
Yeah, the id is that raw instinctual part. Wants pleasure now, immediate gratification.
Primal urges.
Totally. Then the ego is the reality checker. It mediates between the EADS demands and, the real world. It's your sense of self helping you make rational choices.
And the superego.
That's the conscience. It internalizes society's rules, morals, tells you what's right or wrong based on what you've learned.
So while his actual psychosexual stages are maybe less focused on today, understanding those three parts, id, ego, superego, helps us see how early conflicts might play out later in life, affecting behavior and coping.
And here's where it becomes super practical for Nusing. Erik Erikson. He built on Freud, but shifted the focus.
How so?
He emphasized a person's relationship with their family and culture. His theory of psychosocial development is all about achieving specific tasks, framed as conflicts, at each stage. Much more focused on social interaction.
Okay, that sounds really useful. Let's walk through a couple of those stages and how they apply to nursing, like the first one.
Trust versus mistrust. Birth to about 18 months. The main job for the infant is building basic trust. Needs consistent, reliable care.
So if that baby's hospitalized,
Our role is using anticipatory guidance, helping parents give that consistent care even in the hospital setting. We recognize how vital that is for the baby's fundamental sense of security.
makes sense. What about a bit older, like preschool age?
That's initiative versus guilt, roughly 3 to 6 years. Kids are exploring, testing limits, developing a conscience.
And the nursing application.
Okay, say you have a preschooler in the hospital needing a procedure. You could use play therapy. Let them put a bandage on a teddy bear, for example. It helps them understand and cope. It also acknowledges their animism, how they think toys have feelings.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Giving the doll a shot first.
Exactly. Then you get to industry versus inferiority, school age, 6 to 12. They're focused on learning, achieving things, getting praise.
So we involve them.
Absolutely. Letting them help with their care, like tracking their own intake and output if they're able. It builds that sense of competence of industry.
Right. Adolescence, that's a big one.
Huge. Identity versus role confusion. Puberty hits. Focus on appearance, asking, who am I? And you often see that perceived invulnerability, thinking bad things won't happen to them, leads to risk-taking.
Right. So what's our role?
Education and guidance are key for them and their parents. Empowering teens with info to make good treatment decisions, respecting their growing autonomy, but also guiding them towards safety.
And much later in life, older adults.
That's Erikson's integrity versus despair. They're looking back, reviewing life, feeling satisfied or maybe regretful, coping with losses, both physical and social.
How can nurses support integrity then?
By encouraging reflection on meaningful connections, family, community, spirituality, whatever's important to them. Maybe helping them find ways to engage in activities they value, like you mentioned, quilting or volunteering. Recognizing those activities promote growth and purpose.
That's really holistic. It's seeing the whole person in their stage.
Exactly. And beyond these big theories, we also think about temperament. That's someone's basic behavioral style, how they interact emotionally. It's surprisingly stable, often lasting into adulthood.
Like the easy child, the slow to warm up, and the difficult child.
Yeah, those are the common categories. Easy child is adaptable. Slow to warm up, needs time with new things. Difficult child might be more distractible or irritable.
And knowing that helps us how?
It lets us tailor our advice, give truly individualized guidance to parents. Helps them understand why one approach works for one kid but not another.
Okay. And what about adult development specifically? It's not just Erikson, right?
No, definitely not. There's the contemporary life events approach. It recognizes that adult lives vary hugely based on individual circumstances, adjustments, the whole socio-historical context. It just reinforces that development doesn't stop. It's lifelong, complex, and really shaped by context.
Right. So we've covered the physical, the psychosocial. What about how we think? How we learn and make sense of the world?
Now we're into cognitive theories. These focus on how our intellectual abilities develop, the qualitative shifts in thinking, and the social-cultural side of learning.
And the giant here is Jean Piaget, right? His theory of cognitive development.
Absolutely foundational. His idea was about how kids organize their thinking, how they reason and perceive things. He saw development as moving through these distinct age-related periods, always striving for cognitive equilibrium, balance and understanding.
Let's break down those periods. The first one.
Period 1, sensory motor, birth to about 2 years. Babies develop schemas, basic action patterns like hitting, looking, grasping. They learn about themselves and the world through moving and sensing.
And the big achievement here is...
Object permanence.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding something exists even when they can't see it. Like knowing peekaboo isn't magic, the face is just hidden. It's a huge cognitive leap.
Okay, then after sensorimotor.
Period 2, pre-operational, roughly 2 to 7 years. Now, kids can think using symbols, mental images, but their thinking is often egocentric. They struggle to see things from another person's perspective.
And that animism thing again.
Yeah, thinking inanimate objects have feelings or intentions. Fantasy and magical thinking are really strong here.
So for nursing, play is key again.
Absolutely critical for their cognitive development at this stage. Play therapy is invaluable for helping them understand procedures, making scary things less intimidating through their own language, which is play.
Got it. What's next?
Period 3, concrete operations, about 7 to 11 years. Now kids can perform mental operations. They can think logically about concrete events, describe processes without actually doing them, see things from others' viewpoints.
What are the key concepts here?
Things like reversibility, mentally undoing an action, seriation, ordering things by size or length, and conservation, understanding that quantity stays the same even if the appearance changes, like pouring water into a different shaped glass.
Okay, that's the big jump in logic.
Yeah.
And the final stage.
Period 4, formal operations. Around 11 years into adulthood, this is where abstract thinking comes in, thinking about hypothetical situations, theoretical concepts.
And this is where that adolescent egocentrism shows up again.
Yes, but in a different way. The imaginary audience feeling like everyone is watching and judging them. The personal fable believing their thoughts and feelings are totally unique and special.
And the invulnerability piece.
Yeah, that feeling of being untouchable, which can unfortunately lead to more risk-taking.
So Piaget's framework is powerful. But does everyone reach formal operations? Or go beyond it?
That's a good point. Some research suggests not all adults consistently use formal operational thinking, especially in unfamiliar areas. And others propose a post-formal thought stage.
Post-formal? What's that?
It's thinking that's more flexible, practical, and dialectical. Adults at this stage might accept that there isn't always one right answer. They integrate emotion with logic, and they understand contradictions. Perry's work on cognitive flexibility in college students touches on this too.
And the nursing takeaway from all this cognitive theory?
It's absolutely crucial for patient teaching. You have to assess where your patient is cognitively to tailor your education effectively. Talking abstractly to someone thinking concretely just won't work. You need to match their level.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've done physical, psychosocial, cognitive. What's left?
Morality, how we figure out right from wrong.
Hmm.
That brings us to moral developmental theories. These look at changes in our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors related to moral beliefs.
And Lawrence Kohlberg's theory is the main one here.
It's certainly the most well-known. He built on Piaget's work, proposing that moral reasoning develops in stages from childhood into adulthood based on how people respond to moral dilemmas.
Okay, what are the main levels?
Level I is preconventional reasoning. It's very self-centered. Decisions are based on avoiding punishment or getting rewards. What's in it for me?
And the nursing implication here.
Kids at this level might think their illness is a punishment for being bad. It's really important for nurses to clarify that illness is not their fault, not a punishment.
Right. Crucial reassurance. What's level 2?
Level 2 is conventional reasoning. Now, morality is about meeting societal expectations, gaining approval, maintaining relationships, and social order. It shifts from what's in it for me to how does this affect my relationships, or what are the rules?
You might see this when families are making tough decisions.
Exactly. Like end-of-life choices. People often grapple with duty, loyalty, what's expected of them by society or their family, following the rules because they're the rules.
Okay. And the highest level?
Level 3 is post-conventional reasoning. Here, people start defining morality in terms of abstract principles and values that might even transcend specific laws, balancing individual rights with the social contract or acting according to universal ethical principles like justice or equality.
Like the golden rule or civil disobedience against unjust laws.
Precisely. It's about your own internal moral compass based on deeply held principles.
Now, Kohlberg's theory faced criticism, didn't it? Especially regarding gender.
It did. Carol Gilligan, most notably, argued his research was based mainly on males and emphasized a justice perspective. She proposed a care perspective, more common perhaps in women, that emphasizes relationships, responsibility, and compassion over abstract rules.
Which really resonates with nursing, doesn't it? That
Well,
ethic of care.
absolutely. And for nurses, understanding moral development is key for a few reasons. First, recognizing our own level of moral reasoning and how it shapes our care. We have to be careful not to impose our values on patients.
Right, respecting their autonomy and moral decisions.
And second, understanding that frustration nurses often feel. It's often not because they don't know what's right, but because system barriers like resource limits or policies stop them from doing what they feel is right.
Like that example of the nurse caring for a homeless patient and facing pushback from a case manager about resources. That's a real moral dilemma, a frustration.
Exactly. It highlights the complexities.
So, bringing all these theories together, it's clear no single one explains everything.
Not even close. Human development is way too complex. As nurses, we really need a handle on several different perspectives to provide that truly holistic, patient-centered care we're aiming for.
And it directly impacts our core nursing process. Assessment, diagnosis.
Totally.
Yeah.
When you're gathering data, analyzing it, interpreting it, having these developmental frameworks in mind helps you draw accurate conclusions about a patient's needs. It guides you to the right nursing diagnoses like impaired development or risk for delayed growth.
And that, in turn, guides our interventions. Knowing the theory helps us choose the right intervention, predict how the patient might respond, and spot when things aren't going as expected.
And this is all directly linked to NCLEX competencies, to best practices. It makes you a safer, smarter clinician.
Okay, let's make it concrete. Think about this scenario. Sam, 84 years old, comes in with bad abdominal pain. He's confused, disoriented, lives in assisted living usually, no family nearby. How does knowing developmental theory guide your care for Sam's safety?
Okay, first thing, Erikson's integrity versus despair. Sam's at an age where he's likely dealing with losses, physical health, maybe friends, independence. That can absolutely impact his mental state, contribute to confusion or feelings of despair.
Right, and cognitive changes.
Definitely need to consider those. Is this confusion new, like delirium from the pain or an infection, or is it part of a baseline dementia? We also know some older adults might think more concretely, especially when stressed or ill.
So how does that translate to action, your nursing care?
Communication has to be super clear, simple, concrete, gentle reorientation. Explain everything you do, maybe repeatedly. Write things down.
Keep the environment safe, obviously.
Yeah.
Reduce clutter, use bed alarms if needed.
And importantly, try to foster connections. Even if family isn't local, maybe staff at his assisted living, anything to support his sense of self, his integrity, reduce that feeling of isolation and despair. That's applying the theory directly to his care.
Great example. What about evidence-based practice? How do these theories connect there, like that infant sleep study you mentioned?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. The Peacock question was basically, if healthcare providers change their attitudes about infant sleep, does it improve sleep quality and length for hospitalized babies?
And the evidence showed.
It showed that, unfortunately, infant sleep often gets very low priority in hospitals, even though we know sick kids need good sleep, routines, noise, lights, procedures, constantly interrupt it.
Which links back to development, right? Sleep is critical for growth and development.
Absolutely. So the application for nurses is multifaceted. Educate parents about normal infant sleep patterns, how they evolve, teach self-soothing techniques.
And change our own practice.
Yes. Actively limit disruptions. Remember, infants need a ton of sleep, like 16 to 18 hours a day. Be flexible with care routines, maybe coordinate with other disciplines during rounds to minimize interruptions.
And challenge our own assumptions about whether waking a sleeping baby for a routine task is always necessary.
Exactly. It's about changing culture based on evidence and developmental understanding, putting theory into practice for real patient benefit.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive really highlights how complex development is, but also how valuable these theories are for us as nurses.
Definitely. They're not just abstract ideas from a textbook. They are practical tools. They guide assessment, intervention, critical thinking every single day.
And maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Think about how understanding these theories doesn't just make you a better nurse, helping you connect more deeply with patients, but how it might also give you insights into your own life, your own relationships. You might find yourself becoming, not just a more empathetic caregiver, but maybe a more self-aware person too.
That's a great point. It's a journey for us too. Well, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We really appreciate you being part of our learning community.